This week on A Lively Experiment, the mayor of Providence is putting quality of life issues front and center on his agenda. And highlights of a conversation that one of our panelists had this week with the House Speaker and Senate President about unfinished business.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazenwhite Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.
Joining us for a reporter's roundtable, Raymond Baccari, former editor of the Anchor newspaper at Rhode Island College, Providence Journal reporter Amy Russo, and Boston Globe reporter Ed Fitzpatrick. Hello and welcome to Lively. I'm Jim Hummel. We will talk about the many bills in play at the State House a little later. But first, Providence Mayor Brett Smiley said this week he wants to enforce a noise ordinance that has been violated for years and reiterated his cracking down on illegal ATV use by crushing some of the confiscated vehicles for the cameras. Amy, let me begin with you. You cover Providence for the Providence Journal. As I saw the mayor doing this, I thought, well, maybe that's to cushion the blow on the residential tax increase that he wants. He wants to make your life a little bit better while he's raising taxes. But he is focusing now on the quality of life stuff.
Yeah, we heard a lot during the campaign about quality of life issues, snow removal, noise, all of these things, ATVs, and it looks like this mayor is following through on that promise. He's budgeted $100,000 for decibel readers and for an additional licensing inspector who will make sure businesses are in compliance. And of course, we had that ATV crushing event that Elorza did too during his time. I don't know how effective that is, but certainly the city's efforts to step up enforcement against illegal vehicles has been better than the past. Already more than 60 since April have been confiscated, 60 illegal vehicles, more than that. Whereas during the Elorza administration from 2020 to 2022, you had around 100. So it looks like this effort is becoming more intense.
Noise is always tough in any city. I mean, that's kind of being in a city. I wonder, the devil's in the details with enforcement. What in your neighborhood, is noise an issue?
Oh, it absolutely is. There's nights where you have a car driving by at 2 or 3 a.m. and then they have the loud bassy music and my road's already caved in, so I'm not only feeling the car drive by, but I'm also hearing loud music while I'm trying to sleep and then get up for my college course the next day.
I apologized for that. I was scared.
Ed's got to put a little muffler on his muffler. So.
But it's an interesting issue because we just recently interviewed on the podcast a Brown professor who's studying noise pollution, and she said that the noise in Providence is as loud as Boston. She correlated it with what neighborhood you live in. If it's more affluent, it's quieter. And so there's some social justice aspects to that. It was interesting.
It's interesting. We have three, this is rare, we have three Providence residents here. I guess it depends how you go neighborhood by neighborhood. The big issue now is the leaf blowers, right? The backpack blowers?
Yeah, leaf blowers, people complain about businesses, but I wonder also if some of the conversation with decibel readers is maybe missing the mark a little bit. If you talk to people like Erica, who is such an expert in noise pollution, you also realize that infrastructure, obviously highways, loud traffic. We have the train station that's right in Providence. You hear trains rolling in. I used to hear them from my apartment, which is on the east side and known to be one of the quieter areas in town. So I think there's a lot of bigger forces at play.
Ed, what about the mayor's budget? He came out and, you know, and Amy knows from talking to him regularly, he has been not so subtle in his criticism of Jorge Elorza, saying that they used a lot of the ARPA money for one-time spending. Now he says we've got to have a residential tax increase because we haven't for many years, but also to lower the commercial. So he got a little bit of blowback on that, thinking there'd be a trickle down for people in apartments. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And now he's getting some pushback on the council, too.
Yeah, it sounded like he had a lot of people turning out to say with the cost of living, we can't afford a tax increase. He's going to face some heat over increasing the residential rate and bringing down the commercial rate from the residents who vote. So, yeah, there's some peril in that. He did get some praise from RIPEC about balancing and, you know, making up for what the prior administration did. So we'll see how that pans out.
With the whole tax situation, you're only going to get so much juice from that orange if you keep increasing taxes, especially from the property taxes. There's going to have to be a serious conversation about the land that the nonprofits have that's not being taxed. It's upwards, I think, 45 to 46% of the city. At some point, that's going to have to become a conversation where those groups, the private colleges are paying their fair share.
And he's been having those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. The pilot agreement is ending this year.
Payment in lieu of taxes, yeah.
Payment in lieu of taxes, that's ending this year. But I think just taxing them would be better off because you're only going to get a drop in the bucket from what they should actually be paying, in my opinion.
Push back on the city council a little bit. How do you, Providence is always a little bit later than the state in terms of passing, but I've heard some rumblings on the city council. Is it enough or does the mayor have the votes? I know it's still got to go through finance and all of that, but how does it look in terms of what the reaction from city council members to this dual, up and down residential and commercial?
Well, I will say I spoke to Councilwoman Helen Anthony yesterday, the chair of the finance committee that's considering this budget. She did not offer a firm position yet on the taxes, but she said any increase in that residential rate is going to be hard to stomach. So she knows what a burden it is. We have an unprecedented level of transparency this year with 2 public hearings on that budget, the first of which you saw, like Ed said, a lot of people came out and they said, hey, I can't pay for this. And we have to pay attention also to the demographics of those people. These were people of color. These were people who came from immigrant families. They were first-time homeowners. They were kids that were going to be the first people in their family to go to college. And they were all saying, this is going to mess up the achievements that my family and I have fought so hard to make.
All right. We will see. Staying in Providence, the death of longtime Senator Maryellen Goodwin has created a District 1 seat. Raymond, I know you follow a lot of these. It's interesting. We have 3 Democrats, Michelle Rivera, Terry Hassett, who was on the council for years, and Jake Basilian, who is longtime. He's now the chief of staff coincidentally, for the Senate president. And then on the Republican side, the number 2, Nayoka Powell, right? Yep. So as you look at this race, what's your analysis?
Definitely look at the Democratic primary. It is a Democratic-leaning seat. Senator Goodwin had won it by a big margin over Nayoka Powell, who ran as an independent against her in 2022. I was actually reading your piece when comparing where the candidates stand on the issues, and I found some interesting differences. For example, former Councilman Hassett sounded a bit on the side of not doing too much for Leah Board reform, but encourages a review of it. Basilian obviously favors the reforms, and then Michelle Rivera is in favor of a complete repeal, and then obviously Nayoka Powell is not really in favor of repeal or reform. And then the assault weapons ban, all 3 of the Democrats favor it. So just a little bit of, and then iGaming, that was definitely big differences. Rivera and Powell are against it, while Basilian and Hassett are for it. So I just found those differences in what they're favoring interesting.
What's wrong with this picture? Jake Basilian makes well north of 6 figures as the chief of staff for the Senate president. My understanding is if he wins his seat, he can't do both, right?
No, he's going to keep his position while he's running, and
right,
if he
but
wins,
the Senate pays $17,000 a year.
That would be a heck of a pay cut. Yeah.
So why does he want to do that?
I'm not sure. I guess he wants to be a member of the Senate, but it'll be interesting to see what he does for income after that. But yeah, as Ray was pointing out, I did a Q&A the other day with the 4 candidates, and there was a wide range from Nayoka Powell on the right to Michelle Rivera on the left, and they differed on all the significant pieces of legislation that I asked about.
Okay. A couple of nights ago, Ed Fitzpatrick was sitting in my seat. They had a special taping with the Senate President, Dominic Ruggiero, and House Speaker Joe Sakarchi. They called it unfinished business, and as Ed pointed out, it was not the Celtics who did not get the unfinished business done. Heading into the home stretch, just wanted to talk about what's in and out, and they broke some news. So they talked about, he co-hosted with Jim Ludis, who was our colleague here at Rhode Island PBS. He does Story in the Public Square. They talked about the bottle bill, the Policeman's Bill of Rights, and the assault weapons ban. Here's a little bit from that podcast.
Senator, the environmental groups have made a bottle bill a priority for this year, and nearby states such as Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York all have container deposit laws on the books and have for decades. Is this the year that Rhode Island joins them, and do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think we have to take a real good look at how we handle plastics as far as bottles, nips, and any kind of plastic items that we can recycle. There are some programs out there, especially in Europe, where they have some level of expertise as to how to do that. So we're looking at everything. I don't think we're ready for a bottle bill this year, but what I would like to see is probably establish a commission to study that and to take a look at what other communities do, what other countries do.
More than 3 years have passed since George Floyd was murdered at the hands of Minneapolis police, but despite calls for change, Rhode Island has not changed the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, known as LEOBOR. Speaker, is this the year?
I believe you will see some action on LEBOR. I'm not 100% committed, but I think we're closer than we've ever been. And I think the Senate's done, like I said earlier, they've done a good work on this with a study commission, and they're coming together on a bill. We've been in consultation with them. I think you'll see some action on LEBOR today.
Advocates in Rhode Island are calling for the Assembly to pass an assault weapons ban. Do you agree with that position to ban assault weapons in Rhode Island?
I think if you're going to ban assault weapons, you have to ban it nationally. I mean, you can't have Massachusetts. Obviously, some people disagree. You can't. I mean, if Iowa, if they don't ban it, I mean, someone can go there and buy an assault weapon and come to Rhode Island or come wherever. I think you have to do it on a national level.
So we are taping on a Friday morning. The budget, which is always the key logjam, they're going to supposedly put it up for the House Finance Committee tonight. And then really, Ed, it begins to go from there. You really broke some news here because the bottle bill is out. There's been a lot of environmental groups on that. To me, the assault weapons ban, which, you know, every day you kind of have the Second Amendment people up there, pro and con. Did that surprise you when they said out, or had you been hearing that?
Well, there'd been a real high-profile push for the assault weapons ban this year. We had the governor get together with the national executive director of Moms Demand Action,
and all the state officers,
and all
right?
the statewide officers were pushing for it just a few weeks ago up at the stateroom. But it was clear that the Senate president is not in favor of that. So that was news. That doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And they voiced no support for any gun bills this year. They did pass 3 last year, so the prospects for that legislation don't look good.
It was almost like you had your 3 last year. Don't be greedy. What are you coming back for more? But don't you think that Uvalde really pushed that narrative last year? They weren't going to do any gun legislation, and then Uvalde happened in May.
They did, but I mean, just over the Memorial Day weekend, there were mass shootings with a good number of people being killed. So it's not like that stopped.
Raymond?
I'm honestly surprised that there's not a commitment on that bill, especially as Ed had mentioned. There's a lot of support from all 5 of the statewide officers, and there's been events where they did the press conference introducing the bills, and there was a lot of energy in the room. So I'm surprised that there's not a commitment.
Budget's always an issue, and they always say as goes Providence goes the rest of the state. And it's interesting because I think the state, there's some storm clouds on the horizon in terms of how, maybe not this year, but as the federal money runs out, that's going to be problematic.
Absolutely. And I think the state is facing some of the same challenges that Providence is facing. That RIPEC analysis said that, hey, well, we're spending a lot of money in this year's upcoming budget. And Providence is kind of taking a second look, too, at what kind of one-time federal funds did it commit to a bunch of projects that it might not be able to fully fund now. Things like guaranteed income pilot that Mayor Lorza had done, that's discontinued by this mayor. Reparations is getting a second look.
So, Raymond, I wonder, as the budget, we had talked with, when you were on here, it looks like the Hope Scholarship, which directly affects Rick, is going to be out this year. And I think that's probably not a surprise because the May Revenue Estimating Conference came in a little. Explain for the people who don't know what that is, what that would have done for Rick students, and maybe that'll be down the line.
It would be disappointing if it's on the chopping block and doesn't go through in the budget, especially considering the governor put in a budget amendment for it, and you had support from Rep. McNamara, who's the Democratic Party chair. But to explain what the Hope Scholarship is, it would subsidize the last 2 years of tuition for the junior and senior years for RIC students. If you didn't get the Promise Scholarship, you'd be able to qualify for this if you met certain criteria such as 60 credits, in-state tuition, being in a 2.5 GPA, good academic standing, things of that nature.
I thought it was interesting that I listened to, and Ed, just give a plug as to when people can watch this or listen to it. When are you going to drop the podcast?
The podcast is up now.
Oh, it is now.
On the Globe Rhode Island website, and it's on Rhode Island PBS has it up on YouTube in full.
Great. So as I was watching it, it was interesting. There was a discussion about the money following the student rather than the institution.
Yeah, Jim Ludis from Salve Regina University asked about that, saying, there are students in Rhode Island who go to private universities. Not all of them are affluent. Could some of the money follow them wherever they go? And I didn't hear any support for that idea.
What else did you take out of that podcast? You had 45 minutes just with the Speaker and the Senate President, and then you had Wendy Schiller, who's obviously a panelist here, kind of do the analysis. What other takeaways did you have from that?
We learned something about some of the key pieces of legislation that they're going to be deciding on in the next 3 weeks, and one of them was that there probably is going to be some action this year on the shore access legislation. And the House and Senate have different versions, but
I can't wait to see what the finished product's going to be, because that's a head. I mean, you start to get a headache when you realize all the different permutations of that and where the mean high tide line is and all of that, right?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, and they have two different versions, and where are they going to draw that line in the sand, literally? So there was also, it looks like the assault weapons ban is going nowhere, the bottle bill is going nowhere. Senator Ruggiero was opposed to ending the exemption that allows smoking within the two casinos. The unions and the workers have been calling for that to end, saying it's unhealthy for years.
I thought that was a bit of a tin ear. He said, well, they took the employment, and that's if they want the jobs, they've got to put up with the smoke. I mean, you could have said that in 1950, but this is 2023. Don't you think it sounded a little insensitive to the workers out there?
He said, well, he's afraid of losing revenue, and I pointed out that Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos don't allow smoking, and they seem to be doing fine. They're some of the biggest casinos in the country. I think it's only a matter of time before that eventually ends. Also, as you pointed out, Leobor, that they're close to having some agreement after 3 years to change that law.
What else are you looking at, Raymond?
Hopefully the RIC bills will end up in the final product.
Yeah, don't hold your breath. I'm sorry to break it to you, but if I was a betting man, as Ruggiero, so if I was a betting man, which I am, I would say don't hold your breath, but maybe we'll keep our fingers crossed for the RIC students.
Hopefully the Hope Scholarship and the Cybersecurity Institute ends up passing. I mean, being a RIC guy, I'm kind of rooting for that one. But yeah, I'm definitely looking at Leobor, and I was looking at the assault weapons ban until that news was broken. That still surprises me.
Anything you're keeping an eye on up at the State House?
Yeah, I am looking at education on the statewide level, specifically what is being spent on school safety these days. Earlier we talked about Uvalde and whether that could be a catalyst for any kind of change. And it certainly was last year in terms of funding. After Uvalde, the state had said that schools could do their own review of their security measures. And if they had anything they wanted to add, the state would contribute up to $5 million to different districts to do that. So I think that funding piece has been playing out now. You see schools adding different pieces of safety, reinforced doors, shatterproof glass that is really changing the game for them.
But like the ARPA money, there was, it's kind of hard to get an accounting of who's spending what where. And Amy had a great article in the Journal about this. Now, some people, we don't want to talk about it because of security. I've heard the alternate argument that if you have security, you want to kind of broadcast to the world to say, hey, don't try to get into these buildings because we've done X, X, and X. Not surprisingly, government is always a little bit hesitant. When you were talking to some communities, they said, well, we don't really want to talk about what we've done for security, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, that's understandable. Not every school wants to share what they're up to. So, you had some districts that said, yeah, we've been spending. We'd rather not get into specifics. But there were a handful that were able to give broadly the number of improvements they've made, what they've spent, what they're looking at, and things they hope to do.
And do you find that most districts have taken advantage of that money, or there's still money to be it's always in the execution, right? Has a bunch of the money spent, or is it still waiting to be played out?
I think it's been spent, but there are districts that are saying they're hoping to do more in the future. They're hoping to upgrade even more. So not everybody's, done a full, complete renovation of their school with lots of new technology. Some of it's just adding security cameras here and there. So there's different levels of activity there.
And there was the issue. Remember last year we talked about arming campus police officers at Rick. Did that go anywhere or not?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah. And fortifying schools has always been a big deal. And it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, your kids are out of public school. Oh, no, you have one in public school, right?
Yeah, my youngest son's still at Classical.
So as you look at that statewide, what do you think about the progress that's been made?
They've put a lot of money into increasing the security at the schools, and I think that'll continue. But I think it's only one way to address the whole issue of security there.
All right. Finally, an issue near and dear to our heart, as this is a reporters panel. The Access to Public Records Act, which governs not only for reporters, but for all of you who want to get government documents and a whole slate of other things. For the first time in 10 years, there are proposed major revisions. Ed, I know you and I have both been talking to Senator DePalma. We won't get into chapter and verse, but basically it's getting down to crunch time. And Governor McKee's office put up a whole objection to releasing. They said it's too burdensome. The police chiefs are worried about internal investigations and reports and body cams. So, you're with the New England First Amendment Coalition. What are you thinking as we head to the crunch time on APRA?
Yeah, you're right. Senator Palmer has made this one of his legislative priorities, and it has faced opposition from Governor McKee, from the state police. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of it in the next 3 weeks. It would make some important changes to a law that has not been updated in years to reflect the technology, to get access to emails, to get access to 911 calls, to define what a police narrative is so that we find out what really happened when people are arrested. There's a lot of important open government measures in that piece of legislation. It would increase fines for willful and knowing violations of the Access to Public Records Act. So, I'm keeping a close eye on that in the closing days of the session.
We all have our war stories, Amy, about trying to get records. Do you have any you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, I would say broadly one thing that's really a barrier are the costs that are sometimes associated with obtaining public records. It's not something I'm used to encountering as a journalist, but I will say a few months ago, requesting some records from the Providence Public School District, the Journal was almost charged about $1,000 before the mayor's office stepped in and helped us to get those records.
Almost seems like a deterrent, right?
Yes.
You can do this, and then then the average Joe is going to think, do we really want to spend that money? Is it worth it?
Right. So I guess I worry a little bit less about journalists and more about, well, if there's the average person or maybe a nonprofit group or somebody who wants to get records that maybe doesn't have the chance to spend that kind of money on them, what's going to happen to their request?
I personally haven't had any horror stories yet with APRA or when it comes to making
just
these
dealing
requests.
with the Rick administration.
Luckily, they're not sending us emails where everything's blacked out and redacted. But just seeing the horror stories where you have to fax in a request, you can't get an email in 2023. At the end of the day, it's also public dollars. Like we talked about last time when we talked about APRA with Antonia and Amanda. It's public dollars, and transparency is always key. We're on the side of the taxpayers at the end of the day.
It was refreshing to see Attorney General Noronha a couple of months ago he basically said, because I had some private discussions with him, I saw one of the reporters who said that he needed to, maybe it was Brian Amaral, he had to send a letter to somebody. They couldn't use email. And Noronha said, hey, public bodies, get with the program. We're in 2023. So I thought that was an encouraging sign.
Oh, yeah. I think Peter Noronha, more so than some of his immediate predecessors, has been really good on emphasizing the need for access to public records and open meetings. He's invited NEFAC to take part in the Open Government Summit at Roger Williams University every year. He's definitely sending the right signals, and he's got a bully pulpit to do that. So I give him credit for that. There is a big backlog of public records cases, appeals, and he says, we don't have the staff to deal with that. That's a big problem that needs to be addressed. I mean, he's asked the administration for more funding to hire more people to do that. But we can't have that backlog and get timely access to records that we should have.
Because so they say, and I just filed a public records request for a story that I'm working on down the line. If you disagree with any of this, you can appeal it. Well, they know if it goes to the Attorney General, you can appeal it first to them, but if it ultimately goes to the Attorney General's office, they just run out the clock, right?
Yeah, if it takes years to get something, it's not going to be news in a year, or might not be. So, yeah, I mean, that delay is a problem.
Okay. Let's go to outrages and or kudos. Mr. Baccari, let's begin with you this week.
So yesterday was the first game of the NBA Finals, and the Celtics were not in it after losing in Game 7 to the Heat. That's my outrage. Outrage,
depression, you could put it into a bunch of different stuff. That's a whole thing. Celtics Nation is going to be having a very long off season. Ed, what do you have this year?
I share the same outrage over the Celtics. I expected this was the year they were going to win a championship, and I was disappointed to see them come up short in Game 7. But I also want to give kudos to Ray. As a student journalist getting after it, it gives me hope for the future of journalism.
Is there a hope for the future? Maybe we'll have a couple of minutes. We'll have the old-timers give Raymond maybe some tips if we have time.
And he will run into some access to public records
I'm sure he will.
soon enough.
And I didn't say it earlier. Amy, this is your debut. Welcome. Amy's been with the Journal the last couple of years. You've read her column about doing various things all over Rhode Island, covering Providence and obviously education now. So welcome. Do you have an outrage or a kudo this week?
Yeah, kudos to Providence Police. Last night, they submitted their 2 reports on how flock safety cameras are operating, the number of hits they're getting, and I believe those reports were delayed in getting to the council, and now they're with the council, so I think that's great that they made good on that.
And those cameras had been a little bit controversial. The ACLU had put up some issues about their concern, but they are using those they've been able to use those in solving some crimes, right?
Yeah, it seems they're pretty effective. I think it was WPRI that had a report on how they're working right now that they're up and running. So, I mean, it sounds like the initial stats are decent, and that they're becoming an asset to the city, but is some concern, I guess.
From a First Amendment standpoint, flock cameras?
Oh, yeah, I think we should have access to those records. You know, they're just like the body cameras. We should have a policy that gives you timely access to them.
There was a whole long discussion about when the police body-worn cameras came out. I found it interesting in that case with the Cranston City Councilman. That went through. Now, some of that may be politics, some might not be. But, man, this is the one where the guy was pulled over. He had the crack pipe, and he's since resigned. And that had a whole nother issue with it. But I thought it was interesting, Ed, that body camera stuff was out there within a day or two. Why can't? And it shows you exactly what happened, right?
Yeah. It shows you what happened, and you got instantaneous access, answered all the questions people might have about what happened, and that should be the standard. But it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you get, depending on the agency, depending on the circumstances, you get a lot of delay, and it's under investigation.
Okay. Folks, that is all the time we have. It's a quick 30 minutes. Ed and Raymond and Amy, welcome. We hope to have you back. Folks, if you can't get to us, if you don't watch us live Friday at 7 or Sunday at noon, we are all over social media. We archive all of our shows at ripbs.org/lively. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we have our own podcast. Ed, a little competition for you. So wherever you are, if you're on a run or in the car, just pull us up wherever you get your favorite podcast. By this time next week, we'll know what the budget is. We will have a full analysis and everything else that goes on at the General Assembly. Thank you for watching, and come back next week as a lively experiment continues.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazen-White Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.